Hey guys. I felt like doing something a little different today and decided that I'd list off my top 10 Legend of Zelda games. I've always been a big fan of the Zelda games. I get a lot of questions regarding video games and, you know, video games related stuff in general. So I figured why not, something different for the channel, just to something to watch. So anyway, I'm just going to list my top 10, starting from 10 going down, and give a little reason for each choice. So I got them all written down here, but like I said, I'll give some reasons why I really liked each one. So number 10 is the original Legend of Zelda, and I really like this one because it proved that you don't need to be babied to beat a game or to even like figure out what to do, because that game starts off, they just drop you right in the middle of a field and you're like, all right, here you go, figure it out. And I really like when games do that. I don't like starting a game and just having to be babysat for the first hour of the game with tutorials that you can't skip and other stuff like that. I feel like the majority of the game is relatively challenging. I mean, it's not amazingly hard for the most part, but I feel like I really enjoy more games that did that sort of thing. So, number 9 is Wind Waker. I played Wind Waker the first time when it came out, and I honestly, I couldn't even finish it the first time that I played it, just because I don't know, I feel like I just got bored with it and I just didn't really understand it as a whole. I mean, there was a lot to it that just didn't feel like a normal Zelda game, with like all the traveling with the boat and just the way that everything was so spread out. And like, I just couldn't really get into it. And then I don't know, I ended up beating it maybe like a year after that or something, and then I remember I restarted it and played it again, and I really started to appreciate it for what it was. And what I liked about that game was that you really had to go, some distances to really find certain things that would change the game, across the entire world, which was really cool, like something that would affect like a small little town on like one island. You'd have to find it, across the ocean, like underwater, in just like a random chest. I thought that was crazy. And one thing I really liked about that game was the graphics. I loved the graphics of that game, and I always really liked that cell shading style graphics. And I'd love it if more games were like that. So number 8 is one of the newer games. It's called A Link Between Worlds, and that was for 3DS. And it was like the sequel to Link to the Past, and I was really surprised how much I liked this game. Like, it did a really good job of feeling like Link to the Past, which I can imagine wasn't a very easy thing to do. And they didn't stay so close to that original formula that it felt stale. There was a lot of new things to it. There was like new weapons and new gameplay style things, like just how you fought certain bosses were really unique and really cool. But it still felt like you were playing an old school game, which I really thought was cool. So if you never played that one, definitely check that one out. Number 7 is Twilight Princess. And what I really like about Twilight Princess is it seemed just so dark. I feel like a lot of the other games at least have some sort of like, I don't know, like heartfelt kind of, not super dark tone to it. I just felt like this one was just pure dark. Like, I feel like this was more of an adult sort of Zelda game, which I thought was really cool. I mean, granted, it came out when I was like 16 or 17. Yeah, I think I was almost 17 when it came out, and it just didn't feel like a kid's sort of game, which was really cool. I love the stuff with the wolf and the a lot of the graphics were really cool. I liked that. One thing I really liked about this game was the mirrored versions, because when you would play it on the Wii, it was mirrored from when you played it on GameCube, which is what I beat it on. And the reason for that is Link's always been a lefty, as far as I know. I don't think he's been a righty in any game, but the majority of the population is a right-hander, so it's obviously made more sense to make Link a right-handed person with the Wii, since you're using the nunchuck and everything. So that made more sense. Next is, let me see. Ooh, one of my favorites. This is number 6, and this is Oracle of Seasons. And this game, along with Oracle of Ages, are two of my favorite games. I mean, obviously, but two of my favorite just handheld games. I always really like these ones, and I feel so bad for everybody that hasn't played those games, because I feel like they didn't really get the press that they deserved, and I feel like a lot of people never even really knew about them, just because there were so many people out there that didn't really play handheld games when the Super Nintendo and the N64 were big, and PlayStation and whatever else, and they're games absolutely worth playing. And it's kind of like what I was saying for Legend of Zelda 1, where they don't hold your hand the whole time, and I feel like the stories were really cool. I mean, they're pretty basic. I mean, a lot of the Zelda games are relatively basic for their styles, but I feel like this one just had a really cool vibe to it, and I like that you can go between the different seasons to change the environment to get across it. Like, sometimes you'll have to get across a lake, and you'll have to use your Rod of Seasons to change it to winter so that it freezes and you can walk across it. Stuff like that I think is really cool. So that brings me to my next point. Number 5 is Oracle of Ages, which I actually like just a little bit more than Seasons, because I feel like the dungeons are a little more fun. I feel like the overall world in that one's a little better, but I do like that if you beat one of them, you can what you can do is you can take like a code or something from beating one of them and input it into the other one, and it actually gives you a couple extra things. Like, I'm pretty sure it gets you the Master Sword in the second one that you play, and possibly some other stuff. So that's really cool. Definitely gives you a reason to play both of them, even though they're two completely different games. So I really like both of those. Number 4 might surprise some people, and it's one of the greatest games of all time, but it's still not my favorite Zelda, and that's Ocarina of Time. And this is easily an amazing game. I will never argue with someone saying that they think this is the best game ever made. I'm completely okay with people saying that, and it's for good reason. I really love all the dungeons. There's no shortness of dungeons. Like, there's how many? I think 11 different dungeons or something, and each one is very different from the other. I love the themes. Like, the fire temple, water temple, wind temple, or no, not wind temple, spirit temple. So I love that each one has a very different vibe from the others, and some of the dungeons in like some of the other games, they may say that they're like a certain type of dungeon, but they still feel like your standard dungeons. So I feel like this one definitely made it so the whole game felt interesting the whole way through, which is really cool. And I will say, if you've never played the 3DS version that they updated, it's amazing. They did a really nice job with it. I love that when you're holding the DS and say like you take out the bow and arrow, you can actually like move the DS and it'll show like where you're aiming, which is really cool. And there's a lot of like other little changes that they made that were really cool. Just little things like making the iron boots an equipable, or just making it just an item. It's not like something that you have to go through to like the equip screen and put it on and off if you need it. It's something that you can just like tap on the screen and it's just on or it's off. It's not something that you have to mess around with, say like for the water temple where you're always like going up and down in the water. So that's really cool. Number 3 is Link's Awakening for the Game Boy. And I will say that Link's Awakening DX for Game Boy Color is a little bit better. And if you're not familiar with that version, they added an extra dungeon, which was really cool. It's pretty short, but basically what it does when you get to the end of that dungeon is you beat the boss, or, whatever. I don't even remember what the boss is, but you beat him and you get a choice of either the red tunic or the blue tunic. And depending on which one you choose, greatly changes, how the game is for you, because one of them, I honestly can't say I remember which one is which. I'm pretty sure the red one is you get extra attack, and it's like double attack power, and then the other one is you get double defense, which is the one I always choose because you don't really need more attack, but it's nice not to have to keep worrying about fairies or potions or anything like that. Yeah, so I think that game's really cool. I love like the little Mario references in the game. Like you can get like the Yoshi doll, or one of the guys has a picture of his daughter or whatever, but it's clearly Princess Peach. I think it was his daughter. I don't remember, or his girlfriend or something. I thought that was really cool. Number 2 is a game I'm actually playing right now, and that's Majora's Mask. And this one I feel like is completely underrated. I love Majora's Mask. I feel like a lot of people just couldn't get into it just because of how different it was, and the fact that you're on the 3-day cycle the whole time can make it a little challenging. You have to really plan ahead. If you're going to like say do the first or second dungeon or whatever, you really have to plan ahead. You got to make sure you're doing the song that slows down time, and you have to really plan out and make sure that you're going to beat that dungeon, before you get to the end of the 3rd day, or you're screwed. Not that the dungeons are really that hard, but there's definitely a lot of cool side quests, which is probably the main reason why I like that game so much. It kind of gives it like an RPG sort of feel where you have this big world and there's so much more going on in it than just you beating the game. There's people that are have family missing, or they're trying to learn how to dance, or they're trying to be the best mailman that they've ever been. So there's a lot of different things going on, and I feel like that makes it a really cool change from other Zelda games where the only thing that you're focused on is just beating the game or saving the world or whatever. So it's really cool having other people's stories, and I really like that a lot, and I feel like it's definitely a game that people need to give a shot. So definitely play that one if you haven't. And like Ocarina of Time, I highly recommend trying the 3DS version. It's really cool, and it's the little improvements that they did are really nice. And that brings us to my number 1. I don't know if you've guessed it by now, but it is Link to the Past. And this is just a game that I feel like I could play over and over and over again. It was always my favorite. And actually, I can't say it was always my favorite. For a while, I liked the Majora's Mask better, and I did play that one a lot. But Link to the Past just has everything you could really want. It doesn't baby you. The dungeons, they're all really cool, and a lot of them have different styles to them. Like one of them was a dungeon that you have to use like the cane of Samaria, and you had to go around on the platforms, and you had to like pretty much rely on magic power the whole time. Then you got one that's like basically you're swimming the whole time. Actually, there was a couple. There was the ice one where you're slipping all over the floor the whole time, and there was the one I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like in the basement, and you have to like save the girl or whatever, and you bring her over to the light, and she turns into like a demon, which was awesome. I remember the first time I saw that, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Because what 6 or 7-year-old really expects that to happen, So that game, I think that game's perfect, to be quite honest. And like I said, I think any Zelda game for the most part could be anyone's favorite game of all time, because each one has something different for someone. You know, there's so many good things about each game, and I think it's just awesome. I mean, there's maybe only a couple that I really didn't like, but I guess that'll have to be for another video. So anyway, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, you know, feel free to send me a suggestion for like another top 10 or top 5 or whatever, and yeah, I'll think about it. Let me know.